Hello everyone, welcome to this video where we will be discussing how to group data in IELTS Task 1. When faced with a graph, chart, table, or diagram in Task 1, it can be overwhelming to see all the information at once. However, grouping the data into categories is an effective technique that allows you to organize the information in a logical and structured manner. By grouping the data, it becomes easier to identify the main features of the graph or chart, which helps to determine what information is most important and what can be left out. Grouping also makes it easier to compare and contrast different elements of the graph or chart, allowing you to identify similarities and differences between different sets of data. Ultimately, by grouping the data and identifying the main features, you can provide a clear overview of the information presented, ensuring that your report is well structured and easy to understand. Now, we will be using the example of fast food consumption among Australian teenagers over a 25-year period to group the data. First, we will look at where each item began and ended. Fish and chips started at 100 times a year and ended at just under 40 times, while hamburgers started at about 5 times a year and finished at 100 times a year. Pizza started at about 5 and ended at about 80 times per year. Based on this information, we can see that there are two groups of data: hamburgers and pizza consumption increased over time, indicating an upward trend, while fish and chips popularity decreased, indicating a downward trend. Now, let's move on to how to write about these groups in our IELTS Task 1 essay. Firstly, we will write a paragraph about the increase in fast food consumption. This group includes hamburgers and pizza, which both started at a low frequency of consumption and increased over time. To describe this trend, we can use language like rose steadily or increased gradually. Next, we will write a paragraph about the decrease in fast food consumption. This group includes fish and chips, which started at a high frequency of consumption and decreased over time. To describe this trend, we can use language like declined rapidly or decreased steadily. By using appropriate language to describe these trends, we can effectively communicate the key features of the data to the reader. For more information on vocabulary and language usage for Task 1, check out the video linked in the description. Continuing from our previous discussion on grouping data in line graphs for IELTS Task 1, let's take a closer look at the bar chart showing the components of GDP in the UK from 1992 to 2000 as an example. To group the data effectively, we need to identify the similarities and differences in the chart. Firstly, we can see that the GDP generated from the IT industry and service industry were similar in 1994 and 1996. However, in the next 4 years, including 1998 and 2000, the patterns of the two components diverged significantly. Therefore, we can organize our paragraphs accordingly. In the first paragraph, we will describe the beginning status of both industries in 1992. In the same paragraph, we will compare the two components in the next 4 years, meaning 1996 and 1998. Finally, in the third paragraph, we can compare both items in the last 4 years, including 1998 and 2000. By grouping the data in this way, we can present a well-structured and organized report that effectively highlights the main features of the chart. To effectively group data in pie charts, we need to look at the changes over time. Let's take a look at the American spending patterns between 1966 and 1996, as shown in this pie chart. To group the data effectively, we can focus on the significant changes in expenditure between the 2 years, categorizing them into 3 groups. Firstly, there were significant decreases in expenditure on books and food. Secondly, there were categories where there were no changes in expenditure between 1966 and 1996. Americans spent approximately the same amount of money on petrol and furniture in both years. Finally, there were significant increases in expenditure on computers, eating out, and cars. To group data in a pie chart like this, we need to focus on the changes in expenditure between the different categories over time. Let's take a look at the spending patterns of 5 European countries and group the data provided. The majority of income in France, Germany, and the UK goes towards housing, which is a significant expense in these countries. On the other hand, Turkey and Spain allocate most of their income to food and drink, which makes it a significant expense for them. In France, Germany, and the UK, food and drink follow housing as the second largest expense. Meanwhile, in Turkey and Spain, housing ranks as the second most significant expense. Clothing and entertainment are low expenditures for all countries. France and Spain spend the least on clothing, while the other 3 countries spend around the same amount. Germany spends the most on entertainment, whereas the UK and Turkey spend approximately half that amount, with France and Spain spending falling between those other 3 nations. By grouping the data in this way, we can better understand the spending patterns of these European countries and how they allocate their monthly income. Thanks for watching this video on grouping the data in IELTS Task 1. If you found this information interesting, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more useful content.